Introduction to genetics. What is genetics? Genetics is a study of genes, heredity, and genetic variation in living organisms. The word comes from the ancient Greek word genetikos, meaning generative, which in turn derived from genesis, meaning origin. Why is it important? It examines how traits are passed from one generation to the next, which affects everything but living thing on Earth. And an organism's genes, snippets of DNA, are the fundamental units of heredity control for how an organism looks, behaves, and reproduces. All biology depends on genes. Therefore, understanding genetics is the foundation of all life sciences, including agriculture and medicine, is critical. Historically, genetics is still a young science. Principles of inheritance of traits were described and lost less than 150 years ago. Around the 20th century, the laws of inheritance were rediscovered. But even then, DNA wasn't really understood until the 1950s. Now technology is helping geneticists push the envelope of knowledge every day. So here is a timeline of genetics. 30,000 years before recorded history, we as humans have done genetics by artificially selecting the wolves. And at 7,800 before Christ, we have oldest evidence of artificially selected crops. And then we have a very long time passing. In 1973, we have Boyer and Cohen developing genetic engineering. The next year, we have the first GE animal. And then the next year, we have the Asilomar Conference. This sets the guidelines to future GE experiments. In 1980, the US Supreme Court allows patenting of GE organisms, meaning that anybody who creates a new organism, it can be patented and branded, their brand. In 1982, FDA approves Humulin, the first pharmaceutical manufactured during GE technology. And the two, you have Flavor Saver tomatoes. They are the first GE food crop approved by the USDA. US EPA approved the first insecticide producing crop in 1995, and the next year you have herbicide resistant crops. And in 2000, you have golden rice. It is engineered to mitigate vitamin A deficiency. In 2009, we have the pharmaceutical Atrine. It is the first biological produced by GE animal to be approved by the US FDA. There are four branches of genetics. You have classical or Mendelian genetics, molecular genetics, population, and quantitative genetics. Classical or Mendelian genetics is all about how physical characteristics or traits are passed along from one generation to another. Molecular genetics is study of chemical physical structures of DNA, its co-cousin RNA and proteins, and also how genes do their jobs. Population genetics will be genetics of the larger groups. Quantitative genetics, it is a highly mathematical field that examines the statistical relationships between genes and traits they encode. So there are some jobs related to genetics. Lab technician, you work with DNA and within the lab. Salary is based on your dedication and skill. A research scientist, you work in private industries, user experiments and activities of lab techs. You become a genetic counselor who look at couples, see them, and then you look at the history to show whether their son or daughter will get any genetic disease. Immunology, it is for you to diagnose or monitor patients with a range of immune system disorders, including ones which are hereditary. And lastly, plant and animal breeder. With the knowledge of genetics, you are able to produce the best breed for business and profit. Misunderstanding in genetics. So according to the public, there are some misconceptions whether they think genetics is one way or another. For example, the public thinks that every aspect of biology of organism can be predicted from its genes, meaning that every trait you have, there will be a gene for it. Actually no, because we have something called environmental factors and epigenetics, meaning that even though the genes code for something, it might not turn like that 100%. And they believe that single genes code for specific anatomical or behavioral features. But in reality, you have mutation, you have environmental factors, you have epigenetics. They can change the anatomy and behavior, aka phenotype. Skin control alone, skin color alone is controlled by 100 genes. Genes are blueprint of organism form and behavior, just like blueprint of building. Actually, between the blueprint and the actual house, which is the organism, there are actually many long chains before the blueprint can be realized. We have genes, expression, proteins, metabolic pathways, subcellular structures, cells, tissues, organ, and organisms. Even if it is written in genes, you might not have a chance to express it. Genes are uninterrupted sections of DNA that only code for a single protein. Actually, DNA can code for many proteins, and one protein can be actually coded by many DNAs. Other than that, within our genes, there are something that's called introns. These are part of the DNA that doesn't code at all. So some people call it junk DNA. Actually, it is not well understood what are they doing in your DNA. Clones are the carbon copies of the original. So this is perpetuated in many movies. You have a clone, it looks exactly like the original, it behaves exactly like the original. Actually, in terms of behavior, it can be different because behavior is learned and trained. And there might be genetic traits that might appear in clones but not the original. There might be genetic traits that might not appear in clones exactly like original. Or maybe it will be something that is new that is not in the original but they are in clones. Other than that, a clone would not have experience just like the original because they are newborn. They do not have the knowledge that the original has. All mutations are harmful. The misconception is from media actually. So people believe that mutations is very bad. You can die, you can be deformed, but actually mutations are part of the process. Mutations are part of the process of evolution, and evolution is an ongoing process. There are some beneficial mutations that can happen. It can give you good, such as apolipoprotein AI. So this protein, apolipoprotein, this helps in removing cholesterol from the walls of arteries. And the mutation of this gene is more effective. In addition to removing cholesterol from artery walls, this also functions as an antioxidant. So, if you look at pandas, if you compare to other bears do not have any thumbs, but pandas have thumbs, which is an enlarged wrist bone from a mutation. So those with a mutation, they're able to live longer because they are able to hold the bamboo to eat it. So in science fiction, it is an actual theme where genetics or issues from genetics are used as a key plot point in every story. For example, you have Babylon AD, Resident Evil, Aeon Flux, Daybreakers, and Never Let Me Go. Never Let Me Go is about cloning. Daybreakers is about how our genes has mutated to a point where we cannot live on Earth on daylight anymore. Aeon Flux is about people in the future being cloned and there is no more birthing. Resident Evil is about these genes or the T virus that change people into zombies, or also reanimate the dead so that they will be violent. Learning outcome: explain the genetic material involved in the transmission of the information. Number 2, understand cell cycle, cell division, and heredity. Number 3, elucidate or make clear the chromosomal variation, chromosomal mapping, recombination, and various techniques in linkage analysis. So we have 14 weeks, and within 14 weeks we have mid-sem 20%, assignment 20%, practical report is 10, and tutorial. Lectures: we have week 1 principles, week 2 Russian, week 3 Mendelism, week 5 intention of Mendelism, week 6 and 7 is complex traits, 8 is chromosome basic of Mendelism, 9 10 you have chromosome number structure, 11 12 we have linkage crossing over chromosome mapping, week 13 we have advanced linkage analysis, and lastly population genetics and evolution. So these are the practicals, but for this semester we will not be doing it actually in real life, but we'll do simulations of it online using Labster or whatever website that I deem suitable. So these are the reference books. I will give you the PDF of it in the Google Classroom. Okay, this is the genetics of Malaysians. If you wanna take a deep look at our country's genetics, these are the composition of races, demography, because we are actually much more diverse than we think we are. So this is my contact number and email. So this contact number is kind of old, but you already know my actual contact number. The end.